Today, the right to own a piece of the past. We ask, should the museums of the West return cultural artifacts to their native countries?
This move has had ramifications across Europe and the US. It has opened a debate on looted artifacts, a debate to send them back to their country of origin.
The museum is full of artifacts from right around the world, many of them also the subject of intense debate as to who should now own them.
And probably one of the most controversial pieces is that of Nefertiti's bust.
So yes, today we're going to be talking about Nefertiti, the one, the only, the Egyptian queen that I was obsessed with for way too long. And her famous bust currently resides here in Berlin. And why would this famous image of this famous Egyptian queen be here in Germany? Well, it has to do with the tale of repatriation. So let's cover Nefertiti's bust. Will the queen ever return home? Okay, so walking through the museum, I can feel her. I'm getting close, you know? I am getting close. It is very peculiar how many, I don't know what I expected. I definitely didn't think that there would be this many Egyptian relics. I don't know why I thought it would be like her bust and maybe like 2 more statues, but no, there's like 7 rooms filled with these. No, there's multiple floors. Currently on the 2nd floor. Isn't that right, Mama? We're entering room 8. Okay, so I found the room. She's over there. Look at that beauty. You can kind of see her. I cannot record in the room. Okay, so astounding. It's truly astounding. I mean, Her Majesty is literally standing in this little pristine glass, and she's placed above eye level so that she's kind of looking down at everybody who goes and like looks at her, and she is beautiful. I mean, her face is so incredibly symmetrical. She's got one eye missing, both her little ears are kind of chipped, but aside from that, the object, the relic, it is in perfect condition. It is so beautiful. The colors are so vivid. It was astounding. That was marvelous. And let's cover how exactly is it that Nefertiti ended up here in Berlin. So I'll see you in a bit in Egypt. Okay, so now we're in Egypt and we're going to be talking about Nefertiti.
Nefertiti, famous Egyptian queen, but little is actually known about her. Her origins are debated. She could have been the daughter of a top advisor, a Syrian princess. Some even claim that she could have been the sister, but more likely cousin, to her husband.
We know that Nefertiti was the queen consort of a pharaoh called Akhenaten, and he ruled Egypt during what we call the 18th dynasty, which is part of the New Kingdom. And we're very confident in saying that because we have images of them together, we have writings which describe the fact that she's his wife.
And this pair had a very unconventional rule. The Akhenaten moved his capital to Amarna and switched the seat of religion to follow mainly one god, the sun god, Aten, instead of the previous pantheon of multiple gods. Nefertiti is often depicted taking part in daily worship, doing religious activities that usually were reserved only for the kings. However, nobody actually knows just how powerful this queen actually was. She did, however, hold many different titles: hereditary princess, sweets of love, great of praises, the Lady of Grace, Lady of Two Lands, and the mistress of Upper and Lower Egypt.
So Nefertiti went by lots of different names, but the one thing she was definitely known for was for being beautiful.
All races, all ages, all genders, all tend to agree that she is beautiful. And it seems to be mainly, I think, because she has a very symmetrical face. She has sort of deepened lips and eyebrows, emphasized eyebrows, which again sort of really makes her stand out and look attractive. The thing to remember though is that we don't actually know that she looked like this.
You see, because this image that we associate with Nefertiti is because of a famous bust created in Thutmose' workshop in order to serve as a model for other royal art, meant to be put on display throughout the city. So it's meant to glorify, to look as more godly as possible. And it is because of this bust that Nefertiti will go down in history. Because 17 years after Akhenaten's reign, Nefertiti quickly disappears from the records. Her death is unrecorded, and much of her life, her origins, and role forgotten.
So on December 6th in 1912, Ludwig Borchardt, a German archaeologist, was leading a team and excavating in Amarna, in Thutmose' workshop, where they found Nefertiti's bust. And when he first saw the bust, he noted that it was the most majestic thing he had ever seen.
You cannot describe it with words. You must see. It was a sight to behold because this object had somehow survived thousands of years, mostly intact, except for 2 ears that had fallen off and later were reglued, and 1 missing eye. And so Ludwig was in a hurry, and he wanted to take this treasure with him back to Germany.
So it's important to note that at the time, Egypt was under British rule, and the Ministries of Antiquities was under French rule. So Egyptians had no real say on what was staying in the country and leaving the country.
The policy at the time was to divide the shares of the relics 50-50. Any archaeologists that wanted to export the items needed to present a list of items that would both stay in the country and a list of items that would be then exported.
So Borchardt drew up 2 lists, and Nefertiti was at the head of one list, but he misdescribed her as a princess rather than a queen. The other list had a beautiful carved stone stela or slab with a picture of an image of the royal family on it.
So when Ludwig presented Nefertiti's bust, he presented it under a list of plaster items instead of stone. And here's the thing, Nefertiti's bust is technically limestone with an outer coat of plaster. So Ludwig wasn't technically lying, but he was definitely not saying the entire truth. So without anybody really understanding what was leaving Egypt, Nefertiti's bust was shipped to Germany.
And the inspector turned up and he looked at the 2 lists, and he should have inspected all the artifacts, but I'm not sure he did, because he picked the other list. And I think Borchardt must have known that they'd been very lucky, because almost immediately Nefertiti was taken from Egypt to Germany.
Either by pure coincidence or very careful planning, Nefertiti's bust ended up leaving Egypt and arriving here in Germany in 1913, before finally being displayed in 1923.
It gets more complicated though, because Borchardt was the excavator, but he didn't pay for the mission. The actual excavation was being funded by someone called James Simon.
And so James Simon lived in Berlin, and he decided to keep the bust in his living room, next to a portrait of his mother, for almost 10 years, before finally being put on display in 1923.
So of course Egypt didn't go down without a fight. They first asked for the bust back in 1925, and then, well, Germany was like, nope, we're gonna keep it, and then Egypt was like, okay, well, you can't continue excavating here. And then Germany just kind of ignored those orders and continued excavating, which is why I assume there is so many rooms with so many relics within this museum, which is epic, also a little sad. Of course, eventually, finally, in 1933, there was a movement that gained some real traction, and it kind of looked like the Nefertiti's bust was finally going to be able to return back to Egypt. But this was all halted when Hitler saw the bust and basically fell in love with it and was like, absolutely freaking not, we're keeping her.
Hitler's exact words were, "I don't attach any value to their appraisals. I know this famous bust. I viewed it and admired it many times. It is a unique masterpiece, a jewel, a real treasure. Do you know what I'm going to do one day? I'm going to build a new Egyptian museum in Berlin. I dream that there I will create a hall topped by a dome. There alone, in the middle, this marvel will be placed. And for that reason, I will not renounce the Queen's head.
Yeah, that is so strange. He was obsessed. He thought that she was beautiful, but she would not have passed his racial laws because she's got Egyptian parents, and we have no reason to think she doesn't have Egyptian parents. It's an Egyptian family living in Egypt, but for Hitler, she's so beautiful that he's somehow able to overlook that.
So I know it's kind of weird, kind of peculiar. How is it that Hitler himself has somehow managed to keep a bust and somehow form it as part of the nation?
So you see, Hitler noted how the people of the Weimar Republic had recently lost their own royal family, so they therefore proclaimed Nefertiti as their own. So the bust started to function as a sort of insignia for the national identity of Germany. And so the bust remained in Germany during World War II. It was stored in a bunker, then in a bank, and then in a salt mine, until finally there was a whole new problem, because after the war, Germany was split in two.
Ah yes, okay, so after World War II, the bust ended up residing in West Germany, to be exact, in West Berlin. This did not mean that the Soviets did not try to make a move for it. Everybody wanted the bust. Everybody was like, this bust is very, very pretty, we want it. The Soviets essentially said, they were like, okay, well the museum that originally housed the bust was in East Berlin, therefore we should get the bust. And then West Berliners were like, absolutely not, we're keeping the bust. And this bitter dispute only ended with the fall of the Berlin Wall. So it kind of made Nefertiti's bust a symbol of unified Germany. Okay, and so up until now, Nefertiti's bust resides here in the Neues Museum in Berlin. She should be somewhere in the second floor, up and to the right. I'm guessing in this sort of area. So yeah, Nefertiti's bust is very, very far away from home, but this does not mean that the Egyptians have simply forgotten about her. There's been multiple moves to try to get Germany to return the bust back.
And so this brings us to the issue of repatriation. Repatriation means the return of cultural items or individuals that were removed from their homeland. So in this case, the return of many Egyptian artifacts to, well, Egypt.
Okay. And so a popular argument used by countries trying to not give back their items is political stability and political instability. Some claim that because a country is too politically unstable that they don't have the resources and they cannot safeguard objects. But that brings into question who decides what country is and isn't stable enough to house a relic. And also, does that mean that political stability becomes the basis of being able to house important historical artifacts? There's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers.
On the other hand, one of the most popular arguments in favor for returning the artifacts is that these relics are a reflection of the past. They are part of the identity of these countries. So what does it mean for these artifacts to be so far away that people from their own country cannot even see them? Would it not be better to keep the artifacts in these countries and promote tourism for people to go visit them in their natural state? But then that also brings in the problem of money and who can afford to even go see the artifacts in the first place.
Yeah, so if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and move on to your next video, which just hopefully happens to be one of mine. Bye!